Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
So today we have another episode of Rate My Shelf. This is effectively where I take a random square and a calyx somewhere in this house, get the games off it, and do a little brief talk about the games in question, why I've had them, whether I like them, whether I'm starting to get tired of them, and of course then for giggles, I give a verdict as to whether it's a keeper, which means that it's going to stay in my collection pretty much for life, or at least for the foreseeable future, or whether it's a cull potential, which means that the next time I have to do a big cull, it could be one that hits the pile. And given that I've got a lot of games fresh from Essen and review copies lately, a cull is going to be needed at some point, so who knows what I'm going to do with that. But will any of these games make the cull pile? Well, why don't we have a see? So let's pop them down here on the table and start filling the top. Nice and simple, timeline. I used to have about 2 or 3 of these. Now I'm not sure if I own more than one. I think I might have just kept... I feel like I got more than this one though. There's probably 1 or 2 like hidden at the back of the calyx because they keep falling down the back, which is really annoying. I feel like I've got more than this one, especially as this is not even my favorite set. Timeline, this is Science and Discoveries. I feel like that's gonna bug me now. That's gonna bug me. Pretty sure I've got I'm pretty sure I've got Inventions sitting somewhere in there. I must do. But Timeline, regardless of which edition you get, is a very good filler, casual game for new players. I mean, it's a bit of a mess here. The insert is not great if you put it on its side. But basically, all you do is you have a few cards in front of you that represent, in this case, different science and discoveries, and you have a card in the middle that represents something that happened, so the discovery of Newfoundland in 1497. And the idea is that you choose one of your cards and try and think, did the discovery of cocoa by Europeans take place before or after that? More than likely before. 1494. Wow, I'm not joking, I did not plan that. That was literally 3 years from Newfoundland. That was lucky. But the idea is if I get it right, it goes out there. If I get it wrong, I take another card. You just carry on until somebody gets rid of all their cards. That's it. And as the timeline gets bigger, you just make it harder for everybody in order to try and plan where your cards are going to slot in it. It's a very neat concept. It's a neat little idea. It's not one that I pull out too often, but if I know I've got some history fans in the group, and they just want to play like a really quick little filler, Timeline's a great one to do. It's cheap and cheerful. I wish it didn't come in a tin. That's kind of the only annoying thing, although maybe the new edition of Timeline doesn't. I don't know. They sort of repackaged it half a dozen times, so I've lost track of where I am. But, you know, these are nice, and they're too small to really get rid of. They are just a convenient thing to have, especially as you can mix and match the sets. For me, this is a keeper, mainly just because I don't really see the need to get rid of it. I mean, it wouldn't fetch a lot of money if even I tried to sell it, and I feel like just having a couple of these is handy because I do have a couple of family members that are into their history, so this ends up being a really good filler for them, and so that they don't kick my ass every time, I can pick a subject matter that isn't just British history. I could pick inventions and see how they get on with that, or maybe music and cinema. But yeah, pick your edition, grab one of these, nice and cheap, and it'll do you nice for a casual night in. Right, Hive Mind. Now this has been repackaged. I'm pretty sure a different publisher has brought this out, whether it's Repos or Asmodee or something. This is the Calipo Games version, or however you pronounce that. But this is a highly underrated party game. This from 3 to 12 players, but frankly, you play this with a big group of players. It's the best way to do it. Its only problem is that it's a bit long. It does take a while to finish, particularly with a lot of players, if you play by the normal rules. There is one little house rule that you need to do, and it's not even a major house rule, so don't don't get off your cases about it. Literally, basically, the house rule is, on this bit, where Queen Bee starts here, and you roll the die, and you move it all the way around the track, and then eventually goes around here. Basically, start your Queen Bee here. Skip all these single spaces and start where it gets fun. That's it. It speeds up the game, and nothing else changes. But the idea of this is that there is no winner. There is only a loser. You're all bees in a hive, and you're basically trying not to get kicked out of the hive. So a bit like cockroach poker, if you played that, it's all about not losing as opposed to actually trying to win. But it's a cool little concept. So everybody's got a pencil, and these cards are read out by a person in turn. And they basically, there's 4 on each one, and 4, double-sided, sorry, and there's 3 on each side, so 6 per card. There's quite a lot of variety in here. But they all represent number of things that can happen. So for example, what are 3 lethal illnesses? What are 2 ways to fill in the blank? Something class. Okay, what are the 4 most commonly broken laws? What are 3 languages with identifiable accents? Who are 3 famous scientists? What are the 3 most challenging subjects at school? You know, they're all basically that type of thing, or you can just make up your own. But the idea is after you've read it, let's say I do the 3 most challenging subjects at school. Everybody on a piece of paper basically secretly writes down the number of things that are on there. But you score based on how many ones you put down that everybody else said. So that you get a point for every other player that matches your answer. Again, you're trying to think like a hive mind, as per the name. And this generates so much laughter and frolics when it comes to the reveal section. It's already cool trying to think of things like your other mates might know, and it's like, would you put that? I mean, would you? Would you put that? It's like, ooh, that's clever, yeah. But wait a minute, I think it is. They don't think it is. I think it's clever, but it's too clever for them. And it's just, stuff like that's already fun. But as soon as you start revealing, and you flip down and you say, what are the 3 most challenging subjects at school? Oh, blatantly RE, religious education. What, no one? Oh, come on! Oh, come on! People just flip as things don't get mentioned. You know, what are 5 things that you put in your pocket? And I put coins, and everybody is in silence. And I'm flipping my lid going, what? Nobody thought of coins. Out of 5 things, you didn't put coins. I was like, well, nobody carries coins anymore. It's the 21st century. And it's like, makes sense. But it's that line of thinking. You're trying to think like everybody else at the table. And every time you get the lowest score in a round, you move down the hive and eventually you get kicked out. Pretty simple. And you can make up your own questions or just use the myriad that's in here. But man, most people would pass this by thinking this is just some whatever kids like party game, or it's like a mass market thing. Trust me, get it. This is a keeper. I love this party game. It is so much fun. Play it with at least 5 or 6 players and you're in with a whale of a time. If you've got 10 to 12 people, then it's an absolute chaos fest, but it's still good fun. And the fact that there's no winner means that it's simply just don't be the odd one out, and people just gravitate to that a bit more. And it's designed by Richard Garfield, if you didn't know that. So seriously, this is so underrated. Nobody else talks about this but me. But seriously, grab yourself a copy of it and play it. Play it with your family. Play it with other people. It is so much fun. Hive Mind, definitely a keeper. All right, let's move on to something a little bit more serious now with Coimbra. Coimbra, and this is Eggertspiel, so we're basically on the Eggertspiel shelf for the most part. Coimbra is a pretty dry abstract Euro. Yeah, there is no theme in this whatsoever. I don't even know what the theme is. But it's got that kind of psychedelic artwork that Eggertspiel is using, and the stupid overpriced expansion. I don't know why I bought this, that was a mistake. Cash grab! It has been a long time since I played this. But basically, you've got a player board with different tracks that you can level as per every Euro possible. But essentially what you're doing is you're using dice in order to acquire cards and move up potential tracks. So you've got these cool little outlay bits here. Somewhere in here I've got a bunch of dice. I think they're all in this stupid carry casing. Seriously, what was the point of this wretched box? It was expensive. There you go. So you got these cool dice. These cool dice that you can use, and the idea is that you roll the dice and they're arranged out, and when you take dice, they go in your little receptacle thing here, and you end up with 3 of them on your board. What you then do is that you allocate them out in order to get cards from different rows, but depending where you put them requires a different number of dice, and as people put more dice out, I forget if it's you have to exceed or go beneath them, but basically there are restrictions on where you can put the dice depending on where other players do, and of course everybody might nick your card, so there's a lot of tension and turn angst. But the cards get you all sorts of weird, cool and wonderful bonuses. So they all represent these different characters where, you know, they've got instant effects or ongoing benefits, but more to the point, they level you up one of 4 different tracks, and one track is good for money, one track is good for units, one track is good for victory points, and one is good for moving you around a little mini-map effectively with your pilgrim. And it's a cool concept, and it does lead to some very good Euro-y mechanics. I mean, there is no theme at all in this game. It is entirely, it might as well be a beige Euro, but it actually looks psychedelic and colourful, so it's got the look to it. Have not played this in a while though, and part of the issue is a couple of things. Firstly, there's just been too many other games to play. I mean, I tend to play the thematic Euros before I play the dry ones all the time. You know, I would rather pull out a thematic Euro on my shelf here, particularly like a Lacerda or something, before I put out a dry one. With some exceptions, like maybe like Pulsar 2849 and stuff, which I really do like, but this one is just constantly being at the back. The other thing is that I am not convinced this game is entirely balanced, and there seems to be a shared opinion. You've got the 4 different tracks, and it is possible to do well on all 4 of them. But the one that is easiest to do well on, and the fact that you can practically autopilot it, is the Pilgrim track. If you focus entirely on that Pilgrim track and you get a bunch of movement, the amount of bonuses and the amount of stuff you achieve as you go around that map is kind of obscene. And, you know, if you go hard on the Victory Point track, then you're not really getting a lot of the money and the units that you need in order to actually, you know, progress on your turn. You need those currencies. But if you focus on one of those 2, then you end up with a lot of them, and that builds up your engine. But I just find that the Pilgrim just is too powerful a strategy. Every time, you know, someone relatively experienced goes for that Pilgrim strategy, they generally win the game. Even if a new player goes for it, they either win or they come pretty close, and they don't necessarily even know what they're doing. It's a lot harder to deal with the other 3 tracks, and that is a little bit of a put-off when I discover that in a game. But, that being said, the mechanics are fun. But then I haven't brought this out in a while. Does that mean it's now had its day? And despite the fact that I paid too much for this stupid little dice box expansion, I think this probably is going to be a Cull one. But not because I dislike the game. I still think it's a good, solid game. I just don't know when I'll feel like playing it. And that whole thing about the Pilgrim is going to linger at the back of my mind. It's going to be like, well, I could do a weird strategy this time round, but he's doing the Pilgrim track. Do I just write the game off now? I don't know. And maybe there's a house rule somewhere that can, you know, balance it a little bit, but I don't know, that's just, it's constantly going to niggle me. So I feel like this one is probably one that I would sell before a lot of other Euros because it is just not getting played, but I give it respect. I still think it's a pretty solid Euro, and I wasn't expecting much of it at the time, but I think the card combos and that turn outs with the dice does lead to some cool, you know, turns and some cool Euro-ness. Speaking of Euro-ness, that's abstracted with no theme. Heaven and Ale, man, oh my god, you have to try hard to squeeze any blood of theme out of this stone. It's like insane. And not to mention the artwork is an acquired taste. It's not the best artwork in the world. I mean, you know, Eye of the Beholder and all that, but no. I mean, does any of this artwork strike you as particularly good? Particularly this? I mean, you can get by with that, I guess, but this, it's horrible.
If that is a woman, it does look like she was beaten with an ugly stick.
Not to mention, not the best in components either. I mean, Eggert Spiel are meant to be like half decent with their components, but for some reason I feel like they drew a blank with this one, especially when there's not much else in the backs. But the idea is you're making ale as monks, and you would forget this entirely if the ingredients were not called yeast and stuff, because frankly the theme doesn't come out anywhere else in this game. But you thought I hadn't played Coimbra in ages. I haven't played this one in years. This one is just sat on the shelf, and literally the main reason I think I've kept it is not because of the whole, oh, I get to put tiles of ingredients on here and trigger little bonuses and stuff like that. That bit's kind of generic, whatever. What keeps me from selling this is this part, because this is basically the good part of the game, and it's a very good part. It's the marketplace where all these different, you know, tiles are on, and they give you different bonuses and things, and the different ingredients. But the idea is that, like in Francis Drake and some other games, it's one of those where you can move as far as you like, but you can't go back, because for whatever reason in these marketplaces you can't turn around. Don't ask me how this works.
But your weak link is, this is Earth.
Maybe that was just a thing in Medieval. It was all about one-way systems, and that everybody was on the honor system. But that idea of like you can go as far forward but can't go back is a great mechanic, and I would love to see that in more games, just done more thematically appropriate. Like maybe it was a conveyor belt. You know, that would actually work. A conveyor belt that takes you like around this thing, but you can't go back because you can't physically run up the other end of the conveyor belt. You know, that makes more thematic sense. You know, make a robot game of that. You know, come on, get on it, someone. But it's just cool that you have that choice of, well, damn it, she's going to take that tile before me. I know she is, but will she go for it straight away? Maybe I should get it now, but then I got to skip all this in order to get it. I don't want to. Do I take a chance? I'm going to grab this one and see what happens. Oh no, she took it. You know, and you know, that creates some good turn angst and a very good tense choice. And by the time you get round, you hope to have got enough of what you need in order to facilitate all this abstract stuff on the board. But this mechanic is what has kept me from selling the game, because it's one of my favorite mechanics. It just works so well. However, I have not played this in years. I can't even remember how you score it or how the tiles work. I would have to relearn this game entirely from scratch, and that's gotta speak some volumes. I mean, this was on a brilliant buy recently at Shake, Battle and Roll. My friend bought a copy for £15, which, to be fair, was a pretty damn good bargain actually for this game, £15. But I just don't know if I'm ever gonna play this again. And now that my friend has it, there's even less reason for me to own this. Again, thematic Euros get played more often than the dry ones. I think I'm going to add this one to the Cull pile as a potential sale. I mean, these two, if sold together, would free up half a Calyx shelf. Maybe it's just a case that if you want to impress me with your Euros, you need to either make a theme that's interesting, or at least try to represent it a little bit more in the game. You know, dry, beige, non-existent, not a fan. I remember playing Brussels 1893 at Essen with Hilmar. Didn't like the game 6 years ago. Tried it again with the reprint. Still hate it now. Still hate that game. But, you know, this one is still a decent, solid game. But I must admit, this one actually might get sold before Coimbra, because I can't even remember the other half of the mechanics in this game. That's how much it's just gone from my mind. So it's not like I would really miss it. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens in the future. Alright, Eggert Spiel, you gotta have something that I'm willing to keep. Well, how about something a little lighter? Camel Up, the second edition, the only edition of Camel Up that you should get, because the first one just looks tatty at this point. But yeah, Eggert Spiel came and reprinted this Racing Bad Boy, which, to be fair, not played it in a while either. The shelf has really seen a lot of neglect. Hive Mind's probably the one I've played the most in the last couple of years. But that's it, you know, I've barely touched all these other ones. But Camel Up, if you've not heard of Camel Up, then seriously, where have you been? And this one has the ridiculous production values. Like, this is when Eggert Spiel really started paying attention to their production. Because you get the board, and then you open it up, and then, whang! Hello, pop-up tree. Yes, a pop-up tree is what you get on here, you know. And that just looks cool on the table to have this thing. The pyramid, a lot better, where you're rolling the dice. But if for some reason you've never heard of Camel Up, let me quickly explain. You basically have these coloured camels, and it's a racing game, one lap, and you're betting on the camels. The camels move based on dice. They get shaken out of this pyramid, and they come out like unique ones each turn. But the idea is that the camels will move around, but when a camel lands on top of another camel, they stack. Because camels do that, apparently, at least in this world. And they move, when the bottom camel moves, it carries the ones on top. And there's even a black and white one in here which go backwards and can carry your camels around the other way. You're making bets as you go through the race, trying to think of which camel's going to come first or second, whichever. And, you know, the earlier you do it, the more money you make, but then you're also trying to make bets on which camel is going to be ahead at the end of the round. So it's quite chaotic, it's light fun, it's perfect for families, it's perfect for kids, it's perfect for gamers who literally just want a bit of light betting. Now, the threat to this game, and it is a legit threat, I think, is Long Shot the Dice Game. Long Shot the Dice Game is on my shelf, and it gives me a similar feel. You do one lap, you're betting on the horses, weird stuff can happen, but it's a roll and write, it's a little quicker. It actually finishes, I dare say, a little bit quicker than this game, or at least comparable length, and it doesn't take up anywhere near as much space in my shelf. Both games I don't tend to want to play at high player counts. I know that there's a rule in here about partnerships. If you play, I think, with 6 or more players, I don't care. I just play with less players. I don't like that rule. But this is definitely a good production, and it's still a fun game. I still enjoy Camel Up. It's nice, it's light, and it's fluffy. But do I need to own this if I own Long Shot the Dice Game? That would be something interesting in the comments I'd like you to say, because that is the threat of this. Now, for now, I'm going to say it's a keeper. It is a keeper because I do like Camel Up, and I do find it just a fun little, light frolic when you want a bit of a laugh with people who've never really played games before. But that is with an asterisk. As I think more about Long Shot the Dice Game, could this be a potential cull on the basis that Long Shot the Dice Game, if I was to put the two, like this or Long Shot, I would play Long Shot the Dice Game before this. And if I find them to be too similar, then this one could be on the way out. But for now, I'm going to hang on to it. It's hanging by a thread, but it is a keeper for now. There you go. 5 games. 5 games with a little bit of an intro. Maybe these are games you want to check out. Maybe find them on the bin and buy, you know, or maybe you just want my copies. But yeah, that shelf, a bit of a mixture of hot and cold there on that one and keeping Cull. But yeah, you've got a really good little filler with Timeline. You've got an excellent party game, underrated. You've got a racing game that's pretty solid but might have got replaced. And you got 2 beige Euros that, despite being decent, are probably at this point quite forgetful. Because let's face it, those 2 ones, Heaven and Ale and Coimbra, when was the last time you saw anyone play them? I remember people playing them, you know, well, not Heaven and Ale. I remember people playing Coimbra a lot when it first came out. Does anybody speak of it now? Nope. It was a flash in a pan like you wouldn't believe, you know. So, you know, I bet it would struggle to sell if I did. But the game is solid. It's just maybe it's had its day and it's done. That's the way games are. Not every game, you know, games are timeless, but not every game is going to last on the shelf and, you know, out with the old, in with the new. It's just a case of which ones can stand the test of time, and that's why I like doing this series, because it kind of gives me a chance to reflect on that fact. So let me know your comments down below. That's it from me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. Thumb it up on YouTube if you like it, but as I say, comment. Let me know your thoughts on all 5 games. Should you keep them? Should you cull them? What do you like about them? What do you not like about them? Have any of them been replaced by other games? These kind of thoughts are ones that I love to read, particularly on this series. Until next time, remember, regardless of which way your camel's running, it's still only a game. Bye for now, everyone.